So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for participating in this spiritual community. We know you have lots of choices, and we're delighted that you chose to be here with us today. So today, I'll continue our exploration of the hidden garden that lives inside each one of us, and how what has been planted in that garden and what we keep, what we allow to continue to grow, informs us, informs our individual and collective life experience. So did you learn anything if you thought about the talk last week from last Sunday, the things that you had planted in your hidden garden? Did you discover any heirloom fruit trees or poisonous plants that don't serve you and the life that you choose? Who planted them and why did they plant them? What was their intention? Or if you planted them, what was your intention? I remember many years ago now, when I was talking to my mom about me going to see a therapist after my marriage dissolved. And I wanted to understand what my part of that dissolution was. And she was really disturbed that I was going to talk to somebody professional about that, because she was just sure that the therapist was going to say the failure of my marriage, our marriage, was somehow evidence of her failing as a parent. She was obviously speaking from her own fear and her need for other people to approve of the job she did as a mother and a wife. And the therapist didn't ever say anything about that. And I told her so. But it was interesting for me to see the trends and the pieces of history that showed up through me in this thing called marriage. And so I was able to see them and sort them out and separate them out and decide what I wanted to keep and what I was willing to get rid of. And none of us are automatically immune to some variation of this collective unconscious way of perceiving the world and ourselves and judging ourselves and the stories that we tell ourselves and our performance, our way of showing up in the world as humans. And few of us come into this life with good instructions. We just don't, because the people that raise us didn't have those good instructions either. So we get to learn how to parent ourselves and up-level ourselves and bring ourselves along in a way that serves our choice and our way of being in the world. And last year, when I was working on The Procrastinator's Guide to Success, which I'm still working on, it is a book about procrastination after all, I came across a whole series of books by a psychotherapist named Dr. Lindsay Gibson about growing up with emotionally immature parents. And I've told people about this book and they get really agitated about it because they think it's somehow a flaw or a fault. And really, truly, it's not, because most of us, if not all of us, were born with emotionally immature parents. If we think about it, there's a disconnect in our biology, in our physiology, and our mental maturity and our emotional maturity. They happen at different stages in our individual development. And so it's kind of backwards. We're physiologically ready to have kids long before we're mentally ready or emotionally ready. And so it's a problem with programming, and it's how we're built. And so we're all learning to grow ourselves up all the time and become more adept in managing our own stories and our own history and our own programming and our own self-instruction and previously installed instruction on how to be in the world. And so we learn, if we're really lucky and fortunate and all those other things, to tap in to our own internal guidance. And it's this internal guidance, this divine presence in us, through us and as us, that shows us how to plant our own hidden garden and to eliminate those pervasive weeds of negative self-talk, things that we were told and we believed when we were young. And in a new compilation by Brene Brown of her talks and interviews that was just released this month on YouTube, she opens with a little section, and I want to read this to you because it's stunning. She said, "Don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you don't belong, because you will surely find it. Don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you're not enough, because you will always find it. Our worth and our belonging are not negotiated with other people. We carry those, our worth and our belonging, inside our own hearts." There will be a link in the newsletter this week so you can listen to her powerful words yourself and play them again if it helps you to remember who's in charge of you. And let them sink in, because we are the ones responsible for our own presenting of our own gifts to the world. And any story we carry about what we can or can't do, or should or shouldn't do, that we received might have been good information and it might have been bad. And we can't know until we actually take the time and spend the mental capacity that we have to make sense of it and see what makes sense to us. We have to choose what to plant in our own hidden garden and what to allow to stay there. And what's in our garden is what radiates out from us and creates the world of our experience. And if we don't do that, we get what the world thinks. We get what our mothers told us. We get what the collective consciousness or the collective unconscious tells us. And usually that's a diminishing idea, not something that's empowering. We are more than what the world tells us, because each one of us is already an individualized expression of that one life that we call God. So in yesterday's daily reading from the March issue of the Science of Mind magazine, Reverend Steph St. Armand wrote, "The power of the universe is in the joy of awakening. The radiance of spirit illuminates as I find my own being is enough, as I find satisfaction in knowing a powerful presence surges through my unique, unrepeatable expression of spirit, indivisible from the whole. The one mind in me is awesome, and I am faithful to this knowing." And then Rev Steph starts weeding out those erroneous thoughts that were part of her history, the baggage she brought in. There are no thoughts in me of my separation or competition, and none of lack or limitation. And like any good religious scientist, she doesn't just refute the negative, she replaces them with positive. As you know, nature abhors a vacuum and will fill it with the same stuff if we don't fill it with something different that we choose. She continues, "The power of the universe is in the soul that is awake in me. I am guided by peace and clarity, courageously listening to my inner wisdom, knowing spirit moves through me. I praise and celebrate the power and glory of all people, including myself. I am determined to know the highest expression of good as here and now." And this next bit, she says, is important. It helps keep the weeds down. "In my conviction, I do not give time, energy, or attention to anything or anyone denying this good as possible. As love and law are my soulmates, I know joy, harmony, and peace as possible. For nothing is greater than God. And knowing the infallible nature of spirit is the only thing working through all that I am, I remind myself of the joy it is to be me. And then she closes with an affirmation based on a quote by Jim Henson's Miss Piggy. I don't care what you think of me, unless, of course, you think I'm awesome, in which case you're right. Rev Steph's affirmation, I am awesome, and that's enough. In tomorrow's reading from the Science of Mind magazine, Rev Steph opens with a quote from wise spiritual teacher Kermit the Frog. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Who knew that Jim Henson was a religious scientist? I was shocked. So Dr. Holmes wrote similarly in chapter 8 in the Science of Mind textbook. The chapter is called The Power of Thought. Many of you own this book, and if you have been keeping up with the daily readings in it, you read a good portion of this chapter this past week. Once again, I could read you the whole chapter, but I won't. I'll just pick a couple statements. From page 139, we live in an intelligent universe which responds to our mental states. To the extent we learn to control these mental states, we shall automatically control our environment. From page 140, in the great universal mind, humans are centers of intelligence. And every time a human thinks, they set mind in action. Because of the oneness in mind, mind cannot know anything outside itself, and therefore it cannot contradict any thought given it, but must reflect what is cast into it. We are immersed in an infinite creative medium, which, because of its nature, must create after the pattern our thought gives it. It must create after the pattern our thought gives it, because we have been given the power to set our thoughts in motion. That's important and good to remember, because that's our piece in this creation. And then from page 142, we are immersed in the atmosphere of our own thinking, which is the direct result of all we have ever said, done, or thought. This decides what is to take place in our lives. We are drawn toward those things which we mentally image. Most of our inner processes of our thought may have been unconscious, but when we understand the law, we learn to consciously embody what we wish and think of this only. And then we are drawn silently toward it. And then from page 143, we cannot live a choiceless life. Every day, every moment, every second, there is a choice. If it were not so, we would not be individuals. We have the right to choose what we wish to experience. This is hard, right? Because it means we're responsible. We're responsible for remembering that we have to choose. So, does this mean that bad stuff or hard stuff won't happen? No, of course not. There are ancient teachings from multiple religions and philosophies that speak to the rain falling on the just and the unjust. But how we see the experience, how we see the rain, how we experience the rain, how we remember it, how we refer to it, how we think about it, how we perseverate on it, how we talk about it, is up to us. Colombian author Gabrielle Garcia Marquez wrote, "What matters in life is not what happens to you, but what you remember and how you remember it." So I have a personal story, and then I'll close. Some of you who were logged in early have heard this already. About a month ago, I decided to replace the laminate floor in my master bedroom. I'd been delaying on starting the project because I didn't want the hassle of having to replace all this perfectly good laminate because one little section, well, not a little section, but a section, had been water damaged by the previous owner of my house. And eventually, after talking to lots of experts, I convinced myself that there wasn't really any other way to fix it. And I wanted that tile that looked like wood, but was actually ceramic. And they don't make it in a golden brown. It's all gray brown. And I wanted the golden brown because that's what matches the rest of the house. So, okay, my choice is to put laminate back in. So I picked up a spill-resistant laminate at one of those big box stores, and I got it delivered to my house. And then I ended up in the hospital for 65 hours and had to reschedule the installation. And I kept hearing over and over and over again how horrible the subcontractors were that this particular box store used. And I thought, no, I am not going to have that experience. I decided that I was going to have a good contractor and he was going to do a good job and he was going to be careful and he was just going to do it right. And I decided that, and I continued to tell myself that story because that's what I wanted to know as truth for me and my experience. And my decision and my subsequent experience has been and continues to be that I get good contractors working on my house, and they do really, really, really good work. There were some issues with the subfloor, which my house is 40 plus years old, and the slab had cracks, and he's fixing it. And when he and I were talking about it on Friday, he looked at the mess and he said, well, it is fixable. And I thought about my frame of reference always is, there is a way to solve this problem. What is it? Not, oh my God, isn't it awful? But there is a way to solve it. What is it? It doesn't mean it's magic and I can twitch my nose like bewitched, but there is a way to solve it. What is it? And so he is. And it's taking 4 days instead of 1. Okay, fine. It's not necessarily the story or the timing that I wanted, but there's nothing about the experience that's horrible. And every single one of us has the power to manage our thoughts about every and any situation that we find ourselves in. And every story we hear and every experience we have and everything that comes to us, we have the power and the authority to decide how we're going to choose to see it. We plant those gardens in our minds, and we have to do it. Otherwise, we get the default. So I'm going to close with a quote from a book called Only Love Today, Reminders to Breathe More, Stress Less, and Choose Love by Rachel Macy Stafford. She wrote, "It's a wonderful thing to go through life seeing space for possibilities instead of limited options. I invite you to join me in seeing what isn't yet, but could be. May we be the ones who see potential where others see problems. Might we be the ones who provide a helpful tool where others offer resistance. Might we be the ones who lift up where others write off. Might we be the ones to say, it's possible. With the right tools and a little belief, we could change someone's inner dialogue and future outlook to make space for dreams unimagined. What a wonderful thing it would be." So we get to remember to plant our gardens. We get to remember to pull the weeds and plant what we wish to have show up, what we wish to experience. And we get to remember that we're in charge of our inner garden. And what lives inside us is what shows up on our outsides. So do that. Bless yourself and bless everyone you come in contact. Thank you. So I want to close with the prayer. And if I said something that's useful to you and you want to hold it in your consciousness while I speak the words affirmatively, please do so. So I take a breath and I remember there's only one life. That life is God. That life is love and peace and joy and harmony. And I remember that even though I might be having an experience to the contrary, I am always at liberty to change my mind. I'm always at liberty to look for the helpers. I'm always at liberty to see the positive, the beneficial, the useful, the beneficent outcome for me and for all. And every single being has this choice in every moment. And even though my mind might want to be pulled off course by the news or social media, I am given the ability to see peace and to know peace in the world. And that peace is not a fake one. It's actually the true, deep, and profound peace that occurs when each one has peace within themselves. So I know peace, and I know the opportunity for peace within me and within all. And I know that as more and more and more people feel and experience and know peace, then peace will become the norm. So I live in that space and I remember that peace and I remember that order and I remember that love and that joy. And I know that as I fixate on that, as I intentionally focus on that, that becomes my experience. And as I experience that, I radiate that experience out. And as more and more people do something similarly, then the world benefits. So I do my part and keep my own garden tidy, my internal garden. And I know that each one has that same skill, that same gift, that same opportunity. And I bless each in their practice and in their process and know that we each have the capacity to aid in the healing of the world. So I do my part, and I know that same task for each and all. And I know there are so many people meditating for peace and praying for peace and thinking peace and doing peace and love and joy and harmony. And I know the world benefits. Blessing each and all, knowing that great good, that gift already has given. I accept it, I allow it, I receive it, and I know that gift as shared, and I let it be, and so it is.